female balance, ¿no? Tenemos tres distinguidas damas que representan empresas que vienen trabajando muy fuerte en el tema del manejo de recursos hídricos, y también la presencia del señor Darío Pérez. Pero inicio este panel presentando realmente a una persona a quien nosotros queremos mucho en el 2030 Water Resources Group. Es la doctora Jane Nelson. Yo creo que es una de las expertas más reconocidas del mundo en los temas de sostenibilidad y responsabilidad social. Actualmente es la directora de la Iniciativa de Responsabilidad Social Empresarial de Harvard Kennedy School, y ha escrito más de 100 publicaciones y libros sobre el tema. Es miembro de un sinnúmero de instituciones. Yo no creo que no haya ninguna institución en el mundo que no quisiera tener a Jane en su board, ¿no? Y Jane también se la pasa como Gonzalo viajando. ¿Cuántos países en las últimas semanas? 8 o 10 más o menos. 8 o 10 países en las últimas semanas, ¿no? Y por supuesto, como una reconocida líder en sostenibilidad, ha tenido muchos reconocimientos, ¿no? Y para nosotros, y especialmente para mí, es un privilegio haber podido agendar, lograr que Jane ponga en su agenda venir a visitar el Perú por 3 días. Ella ha estado formando parte de esta visita que ha hecho el directorio del 2030 Water Resources Group al Perú, y ha participado en muchos eventos, ¿no? Entonces también es muy grato haber podido complacer la experiencia de Jane con muchas audiencias. Entonces, como dice, without further ado, es un placer presentar a Jane Nelson para ser keynote speaker en Private Sector Involvement in the Sustainability of Water Resources. The floor is yours, Jane.
Muchas gracias, Cesar, and thank you and good morning to everyone, and particular thanks to Elsa and her colleagues here at the university. It's been wonderful the last few days, both discovering existing links between my home at Harvard Kennedy School and a number of the faculty here at the University del Pacifico, and look forward to continued engagement and partnership. And it's a particular honour, I think, to be part of this panel of real practitioners on what exactly are the private sector doing, both large companies and smaller companies, to get serious about putting water and water sustainability at the heart of their corporate agenda and corporate strategy. And I think if we were having this conversation 10 years ago or even 5 years ago, we'd still be talking about having to make the business case. And I think increasingly the business case, certainly for large companies, is increasingly clear. And Gonzalo, I think, gave us a great overview at the macro level of how water and both water scarcity and as well as other problems associated with water pollution, access to drinking water, etc., poses severe risks for productivity and competitiveness and for people at the macro level. And it's worth noting, many of you will be familiar with the World Economic Forum's annual Global Risk Report, but for the last 7 years now in a row, water has been identified as one of the top global risks amongst all other risks: geopolitical, cyber, conflict. Water and climate have finally risen to the top. And yet, I think it's fair to say that climate is very much in the agenda, although not enough, as Gonzalo's presentation showed us. But water's even further down in terms of being front of mind with politicians and business leaders, even though there's now such a compelling both macro case and business case to address it. And so I think one of the challenges from a business perspective is what are companies doing within their own operations, but also more broadly to make sure that we get water and water security and sustainability at the heart of both the business and the political and public agenda. But certainly on the side of business, I think the macro examples of increased productivity and competitiveness certainly play down at the business level as well. It's very obvious, and we'll hear from the companies who are doing it, that you can build much more resilient operations and supply chains. There's obviously cost savings. You can protect license to operate, build trust. promote, I think, increasingly workplace productivity, and also increasingly improve investor relations. And Antonio and Dario and I were chatting at the break about, how in Peru you've now got a coalition of investors, the Peruvian Stock Exchange. We're seeing all around the world, investors recognizing the risks of both climate and water. So I think it's sort of clear to say at the outset that there's a very compelling macroeconomic case, both national and at local levels, and there's an increasingly compelling and strong business case. So then the question is, okay, what do we do about it? And I want to highlight 3 areas where business can play a leadership role, and even the best companies can play more of a leadership role when it comes to putting water at the heart of the agenda. And the first, and if you've heard me talk about these 3 before, but the first is, as an absolute baseline, good water management. And that's really compliance and also improving water efficiency and waste management in the company's own business operations and supply chain. And at one level, that sounds pretty straightforward, but as we heard from Andre, if you've got operations in over 100 countries, which a number of our companies have here, or even if you've got 5 mines in one country, the complexity and the operational specificity of getting it right at an operational site level, let alone down local and global supply chains, is easier said than done. So, I think we can say, water management is in many ways just a tool to, manage risks to people and the company, but, one that's a day in, day out, challenging one to manage. And I think there are 2 key components of good water management. And again, at the absolute minimum, it's about identifying, obviously, and mitigating negative impacts, both on the company, whether they're, Andre's comment, no water, no beer. So the negative operational impacts, resilience, trust impacts, reputation impacts, regulatory risks for a company, if you are having a negative impact in terms of, water discharge or use of water is obvious. But companies, I think, are also getting much better, partly because of their work on human rights, saying, there's the material risks to the company, but what are our salient risks to people and the environment? And often, certainly in the case of water, bad water management is both a risk to the company, but it is absolutely a risk to people's health and to the environment. And so, companies getting better at, as an absolute minimum, identifying, where the risk areas are and making a commitment, to be doing particularly the sort of water accounting, reporting, waste management processes, etc., to ensure no negative impact is the starting point. But then there's also a really I think, important and growing innovation opportunity around operational performance and excellence. And again, I think operational performance is moving from, somewhat compliance-driven to really incentive and innovation-driven in most companies where, there's pressure on costs, there's, numerous other pressures that the operators are facing. The concept of bringing in innovative technologies, innovative processes, to dramatically improve both the efficiency, but also then the discharge and the quality of water discharge and waste management treatment, and how that can be used in other ways is I think blooming dramatically. And this sort of combination of both traditional technologies and new technologies, and particularly digital technology as a way to do that, I think is very exciting. And then in both of these areas, very importantly, and Andre and several other people mentioned this, is accountability and sort of having metrics, setting targets, and then being transparent at a site level, at a country level for a company, and at the corporate level. What is the company doing from a compliance, efficiency, and waste management perspective, and being able to demonstrate that you're meeting those targets and using that demonstration and that accountability to build the trust to sort of get to the next stage of water leadership. So that's the sort of foundation, your fundamental good water management, which is, as I say, most big companies are now doing it, but as we all know, there are many smaller companies, who are still at the starting blocks, even on this. And so what are the, lessons that we can share around that, I think, are important. But then secondly, there's water stewardship. And by that and I think most people are meaning, how can a company commit to a much broader and more integrated approach to both watershed management and also to valuing water. So if water management is about what you're doing in your own operations and supply chain, you have stakeholder management saying, we are part as a company of a broader municipality, a broader ecosystem, a broader watershed, and what do we need to do as a company to both understand our own use and impact on water, but also, as Andre mentioned, understand the economic impact and the use of water of other companies, obviously the municipality requirements, and then most importantly, households and people. And so this is where the sort of we need the sort of the technical capabilities and technical innovation, but the social innovation and capabilities of much more comprehensive stakeholder mapping and engagement, is becoming more and more important. And at an absolute minimum here, making sure stakeholders, particularly vulnerable stakeholders, have some type of voice. And in terms of designing whatever companies are doing within their broader ecosystem. But I think increasingly important, giving stakeholders some engagement in the accountability side. And so something, at Yanacocha and Buenaventura and other mining companies are doing is the approach of participatory monitoring. And many agribusiness companies are doing this as well, where you train people in the communities to be involved in monitoring water and also other environmental impacts. So in addition to the very science-based monitoring that the company and the water authorities are normally doing, you get the communities engaged, both educating them about water, but also in how to monitor it. So that whole area of stakeholder mapping and engagement, which is an increasingly new set of skills which are needed, is important. Secondly, and several people have already talked about this, being able to combine data from different companies, different actors in a particular basin or ecosystem. And then so you're combining sort of different actors' data, but then also increasingly that need to combine and understand the feedback loops between water, food, energy, and the sort of the climate nexus as you're part of that process of taking a broader ecosystem approach. And finally, linking, and again, several other speakers have spoken about this, the sort of scientific data on water and water use and impact with the economic data. And the sort of the hydroeconomic studies that the Water Resources Group and others have done. And then finally, at an ecosystem level, I think companies have to do a much better job at both sort of collective water governance, but also collective water investments. And so let me take the investments first. And Roque was talking about reservoirs. We were talking about sort of improving the technical capabilities of municipalities. What can, if you've got some agribusiness companies and a couple of mines and maybe a tourism company in a particular watershed, what can they do collectively, to partner with the municipality, potentially to partner with donors, with environmental groups, to say, we're going to do a joint program to improve the technical capability of the municipality, or to upgrade, pipes and reservoirs and waste management treatment. Up at Yanacocha, where I'm going to be visiting later today, there's been a project with ALAC, with the mine, with the municipality of Cajamarca, which is now reaching close, I think, over 180,000 people, improving potable water to them. And if every company, everywhere they were operating, was doing it just 3 or 4 projects with other companies and the municipality around water infrastructure, other green and natural infrastructure, circular economy in that physical location and watershed, I think we could be making a lot more progress. And then I think if you're doing investments together, that then starts strengthening what Elsa was talking about earlier, the governance framework, because you're building trust, You're doing joint projects, and then I think it's much easier to govern the inevitable conflicts and trade-offs that happen between different water users at a watershed level. So I think the leading companies are very much, and I know all our companies on the panel today, at that point that they're doing water management and they're doing that day in, day out, but are also are thinking very much about water stewardship and what that means, everywhere they operate in their supply chain. And then finally, and not sort of separate from, but in addition to the other two, is what I'm describing as water advocacy, where individual companies and their CEOs become really vocal, strong champions for water and for water security and sustainability within their local municipality. So that the general manager of a mine or the general manager of an agribusiness project or the person who's running an ecotourism project or a manufacturing site are out there in the community, sitting on the community institutions and organizations. At the national level, they're engaged with government nationally and likewise globally. And I think there's three key aspects of water advocacy to talk about. First of all is very proactive policy dialogue with governments. And I think this is particularly important at the national level, both on a regulatory basis and ensuring that we have smart regulation and we don't have perverse regulation, and clearly on fiscal incentives and other types of government incentives. So things like works for taxes, they're not that easy to implement, but those types of innovative ideas which have been possible because 2030 Water Resources Group has sat down business with government to say, okay, what does smart regulation look like? What do smart incentives look like? So that's sort of one key element of water advocacy. I think the second is, beyond the company's own operations, being willing to invest in broader research, innovation, and technology disruption. And becoming champions for research and technology, because I think in a lot of countries there's some backlash against particularly digital technology and AI and the Internet of Things and they're challenging technologies. But how do companies, and I want to give a call out to the World Economic Forum and the work they're doing on harnessing the fourth industrial revolution for water. We've got all these incredibly exciting technologies, some of which Gonzalo talked to us, and how do business advocate for those innovative new technologies, but also some more traditional technologies. Gonzalo gave the example of drip irrigation. It's been around forever, and yet actually its spread is still not that great around the world. So how does business become real advocates for technology? And one idea Peru might want to think about as you celebrate your bicentennial is setting up a technology innovation fund. Which could be about, social technology of building skills for multi-stakeholder partnerships, but also sort of supporting multi-stakeholder partnerships at the ecosystem level who are doing innovative things with, green infrastructure, circular economy, and other technologies. So I think, finding ways to, for business and government to be real champions of research, innovation, and technology is the second area. And then thirdly, as several speakers have already said, we can have all the good technical solutions and technology in the world without the political will, which is the first thing of policy dialogue with governments, but without the behavior change on the part of consumers, we're just not going to get to the scale that we need to get to. And this is another area where I think business could be doing a lot more, both in community partnerships with schools, and I know Project Wet works here in Peru and other countries, actually educating teachers about how to teach about water. But why aren't more companies doing more in their advertising campaigns to raise public awareness and sort of encourage and incentivize the public to both be aware of their responsibility on water use, but also give them ideas of what they can actually do. So that, in conclusion, sort of very quickly, we're going to have very practical examples on the panel, but I sort of wanted to give a sort of a sense of a framework that, certainly when I'm looking at a company, and regardless of industry sector, I think this could be information technology companies, mining companies, tourism companies, industrial companies, pharmaceutical companies, any company that claims to be a leader. And if you're interested to hold them to account, you should be asking, okay, what are you doing on water management? What are your targets? How are you reporting? How transparent are you being? What are you doing on the stewardship front? What partnerships can you demonstrate at the ecosystem level, both in investments and advocacy? And then finally, what are you doing as champions in your public policy, dialogue, research, and sort of education and awareness raising? And I think your companies need to be able to demonstrate both empirically with hard evidence as well as sort of stories what they're doing in those three areas. And if we had the world's largest 1,000 companies and the top 100 companies in Peru sort of committing to that sort of multi-layered agenda, I think we'd be moving forward much more strongly than we currently are on the Sustainable Development Goals. And I'll finish with that point, because obviously clean water and sanitation, Sustainable Development Goal 6, but as all of us who are passionate about water know, there's not one single one of those other Sustainable Development Goals can you achieve without water, and to a certain extent, likewise back and forth. And so that's, I think, another big leadership challenge and opportunity for the private sector is, understanding as a company how do all 17 of the Sustainable Development Goals apply to the company's both risk management and its sort of value creation and its values opportunities. And then being able to demonstrate, particularly where companies are major users of water, what the company is doing on SDG 6 in all three of those areas. But I think the bottom line is, if we have any hope at all of getting near to achieving the Sustainable Development Goals, A, the private sector has to be an absolutely crucial and central part of the solution with government and other actors. B, the sort of the innovation opportunity, as well as the risk management opportunity, and the sort of technology and process and product innovation opportunity is enormous and potentially worth a lot of money to companies. And then thirdly, that need for business to be accountable on what it's doing and accountable to its partners is going to be crucial. And I'll now hand back to Cesar, and we'll be getting some really good practical examples from some of what I certainly consider to be the world's leading companies in this area on how to make this work in practice.
Muchas gracias, Jane.
Invito a los panelistas para comenzar la discusión. Y realmente, muchas gracias, Rien, por reflexionar mucho sobre el liderazgo empresarial en lo que es crítico para países como el nuestro, ¿no? Que es la seguridad del agua, ¿no? Y también tus comentarios sobre la agenda para el Bicentenario, ¿no? Sería excelente y tomamos ese reto en 2030 Water Resources Group Perú, ¿no? Para poder presentar ideas, ¿no? Para poder poner el tema de agua en agenda como símbolo de inclusión, como símbolo de preocupación y de garantizar el tema de seguridad hídrica para el país, ¿no? Muchas gracias por esos comentarios. Ahora sí voy a presentar a los panelistas brevemente y pedirles los comentarios sobre la presentación de Jane. Y voy a presentar primero a todos. Primero tenemos a Roberta Barbieri, que está a mi derecha. Roberta, y es vicepresidenta de Soluciones Ambientales y Hídricas Globales de PepsiCo. O sea que imagínense el encargo que tienen de incluir el tema de sostenibilidad en las agendas de PepsiCo a nivel corporativo y también a nivel de país, ¿no? O sea, es un trabajo, y también forma parte del Comité de Dirección del 2030 Water Resources Group y de la Alianza Global de Plásticos del Foro Económico Mundial, ¿no? Ella tiene una maestría en Ingeniería Ambiental de New Haven y un bachillerato en Conservación Ambiental y Estudios Internacionales de New Hampshire. También a mi derecha, acá está Ulrike Zapiro, que es la directora senior de Sostenibilidad de Gestión de Agua y Agricultura de Coca-Cola, otro gran encargo que tiene ella a nivel global. Y también forma parte del directorio del Comité de Dirección del 2030 Water Resources Group, contando con una maestría en Ciencia Política y posgrados en Liderazgo Climático y Desarrollo Sostenible en Cambridge. Tenemos acá a mi izquierda al señor Darío Pérez, que representa la compañía Fluence Corporation, ¿no? Ingeniero mecánico, mucha experiencia en operaciones de plantas y desalinización, que también hará nuestros comentarios. Y al final de la derecha tenemos a alguien que no necesita mayor presentación, que es Julia Torreblanca, que es la vicepresidenta para Asuntos Corporativos de Cerro Verde. Una mina que, como ya lo he comentado en el panel anterior, tiene un liderazgo increíble, ¿no? En todo lo que es el tema del manejo de recursos hídricos, ¿no? Julia está encargada hace 22 años de posicionar, ¿no? Cerro Verde como un actor importante en Arequipa, ¿no? Y es responsable del crecimiento, del desarrollo sostenible. Y solo como referencia, para los que no saben, Cerro Verde ha invertido ya 1.500 millones de soles en proyectos de inversión hídrica, y eso es un ejemplo que hay que resaltar. Entonces, empezamos la discusión, empezamos por Roberta, para preguntarte los comentarios sobre la presentación de Jane, inicialmente.
Great, thanks, Cesar, and thank you, everyone. Delighted to be here. It's a privilege and an honor. Thank you, Elsa, for the invitation. I wanted to focus on two things that I heard from Jane, who is such a thought leader in this space and a privilege to be around at any point. Thanks, Ulrika. First, the concept of water as a risk for companies. It's no understatement to say that water risk has risen to the board of directors level. I know, speaking for PepsiCo, this is absolutely true. PepsiCo's board of directors reviews a number of risks that are financially material to the company on a regular basis throughout the year after year. There's about 6 such major global financially material risks to PepsiCo, and water is one of them. Water is a financial risk to us at every part in our value chain, particularly in agriculture and in operations. So I'm here to tell you that Jane was absolutely correct about that point. Water is a huge risk for us in food and beverage, and is represented at the highest levels in PepsiCo. The second comment on Jane's remarks that I wanted to make was the absolute importance of companies moving from water management to water stewardship. As I like to say, if our PepsiCo operations are water stressed, I can guarantee you that the whole watershed or the whole community is also water stressed. And if we as a company were to continue to just view water as a problem within the 4 walls of our plant and focusing on efficiency, which is very important, but if that's all that we were to do, it would have no impact on water as a risk to our business beyond the 4 walls of our plant. So I'll close just by supporting wholeheartedly Jane's comments that companies need to move away from just compliance to stewardship.
Muchas gracias, Roberta. ¿Tus comentarios, Ulrike?
Thank you very much. I'm not going to repeat what Roberta just said, because that picture is absolutely the same. Power company, I'm sure Andre has raised similar points. I'd just like to maybe take it a step further. I think we've all been sitting here, and it's been really helpful, Jane, and I think that's why you're so successful. You very clearly outline what are the 3 steps of water stewardship and advocacy beyond the basics of efficiency and operational concern. And you sit there as a company representatives and basically tick in your mind, we do this and we do that, and we're driving efficiency through our business, and we're replenishing, and we're engaging in advocacy, and we're engaging with stakeholders. And then you sit there and you think, so why are we where we are today? Yeah. Why are we not making the substantial progress that we need? And it's interesting, Jane, that you opened your talk with the affirmation by the United Nations, we have a strong business case. And those 2 things don't go quite together for me in my mind. I think the challenge is we don't have a strong business case, or we don't have a strong enough business case for more organizations than the few that are always on panels like these. Now, the food and beverage industry is always sort of, I'm sitting on panels, I've always been directly attacked. So you are using a lot of water. And my first reaction is, we do use a lot of water, in particular if you include the entire supply chain. But the main thing is, we are visible water users. It's very clear if you are selling beverages, if you're selling beer, if you're selling drinks, that you are using water. And if you are a food company where agriculture is part of your clearly part of your ingredients, and we know that agriculture uses 80% of water, that you are in total a relatively large water user. But mainly because we're visible and because our stakeholders, our investors, our business, our governance really has embedded water risks into the way how we think about business development. We are probably the leaders in the space. But in order to make that transformational change that we need, more companies need to understand how fundamental water is to their business. Whether they use a lot or not, it doesn't matter, actually. If it runs out or if it's so polluted and too polluted to use, we are all dependent. And it's very simple. If we are selling products, whatever products, to whoever people, the fundamentals of a thriving economy, of thriving communities, is good water and availability of water. And I would come close at that one challenge in an economics school. It's a nice challenge to put forward. One of the big issues around us not having the strong enough business case right now, I believe, is that we haven't actually made the economics argument yet, right? Mm-hmm. It is, I have one sort of very low, one data point, which is from the World Bank, that water stress and water scarcity is probably affecting about 10%, 6 to 10% of a GDP in water-stressed areas. That's so far the only real strong economics data point that we have around water. We keep water in the environmental space, we talk about biodiversity, we talk about nature-based solutions. It's in that particular pigeonhole, and it needs to come out of that pigeonhole, it needs to go into the economics pigeonhole, or at least stretch that, because otherwise it's not going to be a business case. And I would love to see that schools and the brains that are going into these schools help us to make that business case much more strongly. We've done it on climate. I mean, climate 20 years ago, 30 years ago, was an abstract challenge that might come and nobody really knew how to relate to it. We have made the economics, but we've waited a bloody long time, and now it's pretty late. Let's avoid this on water because we can't afford to get to a similar crisis.
Muchas gracias, Ulrike, por tus comentarios. Ya volveremos con la ronda de preguntas sobre el tema del Strong Business Case. ¿Tus comentarios, Julia?
Me voy a adelantar un poquito al business case, pero sí quiero agradecer por la invitación y definitivamente no solamente estoy de acuerdo con los comentarios de Jane, de Roberta y de Ulrike también, sino que quisiera aplicar un poquito todo lo que ya han explicado. ¿Qué ocurre? En Arequipa no solamente pensamos como global y actuamos como local, aunque muchos arequipeños piensan que no es así y que somos siempre los líderes en lo que hacemos. Sin embargo, en el caso de Cerro Verde se muestra lo que decíamos hace un momento. Es un caso económico, básicamente. O sea, el hecho de haber podido expandir nuestras operaciones en el año 2004 por primera vez y en el año 2015 por segunda vez, es un ejemplo claro de por qué una empresa debe involucrarse no solamente en el manejo del agua local, sino también ponerse la camiseta a nivel nacional. ¿Qué ocurre en el caso de Cerro Verde? Minero Perú privatiza Cerro Verde en el año 94 y una de las razones de la privatización es porque no se tenía los recursos suficientes para construir una concentradora más grande de la que ya tenía Minero Perú en sus instalaciones, porque le faltaba agua y le faltaba energía a un precio razonable. El tema de la energía se soluciona con el Sistema Integrado Nacional Eléctrico, pero igual nosotros no podíamos hacer llover y desde los años 80 la cuenca del río Chili había estado declarada agotada y ningún agricultor, ningún poblador y menos aún una empresa minera podía requerir recursos adicionales de agua. Entonces empezamos a trabajar o continuamos nuestro trabajo con lo que en ese momento era el Comité Multisectorial del río Chili, ejemplo además de cuenca y de manejo de cuenca a nivel nacional, que ahora ya no se denomina así, ahora es el Consejo Hídrico de Cuenca, en donde todos los actores, uso poblacional a través de SEDAPAR, uso eléctrico, EGASA, teníamos a la industria representada por varias empresas, los agricultores y todas las juntas de usuarios de los agricultores del río Chili, más Cerro Verde sentados alrededor de la misma mesa. Entonces, se trazan diferentes políticas en qué se necesitaba hacer para tener más agua. Asegurar disponibilidad de mayor recurso hídrico, por un lado, la calidad del agua, porque el desagüe se estaba yendo directamente al río Chili sin ningún tratamiento y necesitábamos más agua potable para la población que continúa llegando a Arequipa sin planificación, en línea con lo que comentaba Roque en el panel anterior. Entonces, juntos, en una plataforma no institucionalizada en ese momento, decidimos trabajar en atender todas estas líneas de acción. Y añadimos después educación, porque era necesario que todos, la población y todos los usuarios sobre todo, tengamos en cuenta que el agua era importante para todos y para el éxito de nuestros diferentes negocios e industrias. Entonces, EGASA y Cerro Verde empiezan a construir lo que ahora nosotros denominamos el círculo virtuoso del agua, con la construcción y cofinanciamiento de la presa Pillones y la presa Bamputaña, que ambas juntas añaden 120 millones de metros cúbicos al sistema regulado del río Chile. Entonces ya la cuenca ya no estaba agotada. Gracias a esto se tramita licencia de uso poblacional para Sedapar, que es más, la tuvimos que tramitar nosotros. La agricultura recibió agua adicional para sus recursos y obviamente de acuerdo a sus requerimientos, y al final Cerro Verde recibe agua también del sistema integrado que ha sido mejorado gracias a estas dos represas. Entonces, con esto salvamos el primer problema. Ya el problema que tuvo Minero Perú se salvó. Después de 9 estudios de factibilidad, logramos invertir en ese momento $900 millones para construir una primera concentradora y empezar, y en ese momento duplicamos nuestra producción de cobre. Triplicamos el número de trabajadores de Cerro Verde, que originalmente en ese momento éramos 480, terminamos siendo 1,000 primero y después 1,900 operando todas las operaciones integradas de Cerro Verde. Eso es valor económico. Si nosotros hubiéramos esperado que el Estado solo construya la presa, todavía tendríamos 489 trabajadores en lugar de haber logrado crecer nuestras operaciones. Luego, por diferentes temas que no vamos a mencionar ahora, nos sentamos nuevamente para exponer estos diferentes lineamientos ya a mayor escala, incluyendo al Gobierno Nacional, Ministerio de Economía y Finanzas, Ministerio de Energía y Minas, Agricultura, el ANA y obviamente todas las autoridades de Arequipa, lideradas en ese momento por el presidente regional, con una visión muy amplia de lo que necesita Arequipa y necesitaba y necesita Arequipa todavía. Alcaldes representados, agricultores representados. Y vimos que además ya habíamos logrado más agua, pero necesitábamos una planta de agua potable para la población que seguía llegando y tratar los desagües. Nos comprometimos a hacer la planta de agua potable y los alcaldes con la plata del dinero del canon minero se comprometieron a hacer la planta de desagües. Al final construimos la planta, está en operación, ya da agua a 350,000 pobladores de Arequipa con nuestros recursos propios, o sea, de Cerro Verde y de sus accionistas, y los alcaldes no lograban ponerse de acuerdo en dónde construir la planta de desagües. Al final, solo 4 de los 32 alcaldes que eran los accionistas de Sedapar, la empresa, el Water Utility Company de Arequipa, no lo hicieron y nosotros estábamos evaluando ya otra expansión, que es la que comenté yo, que empezamos ya a operar con una segunda concentradora mayor el año 2015, fines del 2015. Entonces, el ANA, o el ALA en Arequipa, nos propone, usen los desagües. Entonces, escuchamos, vimos, evaluamos. A nuestro accionista mayoritario, Cyprus Climax, representado por Free, por el grupo al que pertenece, le hacía muy difícil tomar la decisión, porque no era solamente un tema de reputación de Cerro Verde como buen cumplidor, sino teníamos que en adelante trabajar con 32 o más alcaldes que eran los accionistas de Sedapar. Para tomar esta decisión se tomó mucho tiempo, pero al final vimos que era lo correcto, porque todo el desagüe de Arequipa doméstico e industrial se iba al río Chili, sin ningún tratamiento. Veíamos cuando íbamos a la mina muchas veces el río rojo, porque las curtiembres no tratan sus desagües, y lo seguimos viendo rojo, pero ya no en el río, está en la planta de tratamiento que hemos construido, que se llama La Enlosada. La Enlosada trata el 95.5% del desagüe doméstico de Arequipa, la financiamos íntegramente porque, nuevamente una decisión económica, usamos nosotros 1 metro cúbico por segundo en promedio anual del agua, tratamos todo el desagüe doméstico de Arequipa y bueno, todo el desagüe que llega a la planta en realidad, y se devuelve la diferencia en condiciones óptimas, cumpliendo límites máximos permisibles y estándares de calidad para que Sedapar disponga de esa agua a futuro. Entonces, esto es un ejemplo claro de lo que decíamos. ¿Por qué debe una empresa involucrarse? ¿Por qué se debe poner la camiseta? Porque el agua tiene un valor. Por eso es que recirculamos el agua, a pesar de estar en el desierto de Atacama, aunque creemos los arequipeños que estamos en el paraíso, nosotros reutilizamos más del 89% del agua que nosotros tomamos. Si no tuviéramos este uso responsable, necesitaríamos 4 veces más la cantidad de agua que tomamos para poder producir los cátodos de cobre y los concentrados que nosotros vendemos al Perú y al mundo. Entonces, ese es un ejemplo que quería mencionar, y obviamente pueden sacar la cuenta cuánto cobre hemos logrado vender del 2004 a la fecha, gracias a estas inversiones que se han hecho en conjunto con toda la población de Arequipa representada.
Muchas gracias, Julia. Darío, tus comentarios.
Aló. Primero que nada, gracias, César, por tenerme acá. Voy a hablar en español porque creo que hay más gente que habla español que inglés acá, so sorry. Lo que dice Jane y lo que se ha dicho acá, lo sabemos todos. El problema del agua es cuestión de tiempo hasta que nos quedemos sin ella. Ya sucedió en Sudáfrica, casi sucede en Ciudad del Cabo. Y cómo ellos pudieron revertir este día cero fue simple. Comenzaron a utilizar el agua de una manera más lógica y con más racionamiento. Hay muchas cosas que se pueden hacer para el manejo del agua. Yo no puedo hablar como usuario de agua porque en el negocio que yo estoy es producción y tratamiento de agua. Pero como tal, existen definitivamente muchas formas que se pueden hacer para manejar el agua de una manera más eficiente. Por ejemplo, hace 10 años, cuando yo apenas llegué al Perú, tuve una reunión con la gente de Sedapal, el directorio, con el gerente general de Sedapal en aquella época, para presentarle una idea muy innovadora. Era simplemente cambiar los sistemas de flushing, los sistemas de bajar los inodoros por sistemas duales. En el Perú no existe una legislación, ni existe ninguna ley ni regla que empuje a las personas a utilizar 2 sistemas, uno de gran capacidad y uno de menor capacidad. Se hizo un estudio y podíamos ahorrar aproximadamente 3 millones de metros cúbicos al mes o al día, no recuerdo, simplemente cambiando el 50% de estos sistemas que costaban $10 cada uno. La idea llegó hasta ahí. Nunca pasó nada. Entonces, definitivamente creo que existe mucha resistencia desde el punto de vista político para tomar decisiones que quiebren el status quo de la situación como tal. Y esa es una de las barreras que nosotros como empresa privada nos estamos consiguiendo en este país. Y de eso voy a hablar un poco más adelante porque voy a tener la oportunidad de exponer un par de ideas que me parecen muy interesantes acá, pero ahora no es el momento. Para concluir, lo único que quisiera yo es decir a las personas que tratemos de pensar un poco más de que el problema del agua es inminente, va a suceder y tarde o temprano vamos a tener nosotros que comenzar a cuidarla. Adelante, gracias.
Gracias, Darío. Jane, volviendo a ti, y según los comentarios sobre todo de Ulrike, nos gustaría saber qué opinas con la experiencia que tú tienes en varios directorios, en varias instituciones, sobre cómo podemos ayudar al sector empresarial a tener un strong business case, ¿no?, para el tema de manejo de recursos hídricos.
And I think very much, recognize what Ulrike was saying, and that at the end of the day, and I don't know if it's 500 or 1,000 companies, you're probably only 500 that are really at the sort of water stewardship advocacy end of the spectrum, and partly because, as Roberta was saying, they're in industries where their boards and their investors have identified water as a material risk, and they've made a board-level commitment. They have a water strategy and policies, they've got targets, they've got metrics, they've got goals, and they've got a lot of external stakeholders holding them to account. And so I think Ulrike's comment on, the high profile or the very visible companies that are water users, are ahead and they see the business case. But even there, they're constantly having to, make difficult capital capital allocation decisions between that, between climate, between human rights, between packaging. So, it's even for the leaders, I think, a sort of daily challenge to keep making the business case. I think more broadly, she's absolutely right in that there isn't enough of a business case for, I think, 3 reasons. Companies will, do things either because their investors are demanding it. And I think although we're hearing more and more about investors caring about these issues, and many of the big ones say they do care, and beginning to invest in these issues, that's probably not getting enough to the smaller or the medium-sized companies or privately owned companies. Secondly is consumers and consumer demand, and again I think with the consumer goods companies there is that demand, but mining is a lot of our mining is business to business. The other companies are seeing NGO demand but not necessarily consumer demand. So until consumer behavior sort of starts changing and pushing companies in the right direction, there's not a strong enough business case. And then thirdly though, and I think most importantly, is government. And, and we've got 3 challenges there, because at the end of the day, we talk about multi-stakeholder partnerships and they're very important, but, ultimate responsibility has to be with government, I think, and even the biggest companies in the world, individually, let alone even acting collectively, find it difficult to move the needle, without the right regulatory environment, fiscal incentives, and technical managerial capability of government. And in all 3 of those areas, if you think about it, most governments have good regulations on their books, but they, lack the technical and, administrative capabilities often, to ensure that they are implemented. Or you have the problem, and Andre gave us a good example at a municipal level, where you have sort of, perverse situations where companies improve their water efficiency and the municipality increases the tariffs, because they've got their fiscal constraints. And so thinking very seriously through what do smart regulations and incentives look like at both the national level and a municipal level, is important. And it's not that we don't know what some of the smart regulations are, and the World Bank and the Inter-American Development Bank does a lot of work on that, but it's, then how are those implemented, and how can business, work collaboratively with government on implementing them. But I think even if we get the regulations and the fiscal incentives right, and, government, I think someone was telling me, I hope I got this correct this week, that the blue certificate, here in Peru, from a government procurement perspective, if you've got a blue certificate, that's a benefit, if you're doing government procurement. So that's a great example of a fiscal incentive on the part of government. Obviously, another key fiscal, so not fiscal, but financial incentives from government are, they're the biggest investors in the world. If you think of the big, public pension funds, etc., and it's often the public pension funds that are furthest behind in, pushing some of these issues. So I think there's a lot more that can be done on smart regulation, a range of sort of incentives on government. But at the end of the day, the biggest challenge, I think, is technical and operational and administrative capacity. And that's where, the bank, certainly at a municipal level, bank and donors and companies working together, to continue building government capacity, is going to be absolutely crucial, and that's not an easy thing to do. But and partly as this field, and I think we're seeing it in climate, and we're certainly seeing it in artificial intelligence and technology. Each of these areas becomes more and more sophisticated, and yet the really leading experts in all of these fields often go into the private sector, and so how do we encourage more of that sort of capability and have incentives for people to work in the public sector on these issues. But I think so that the investor piece, the consumer piece, and then particularly important the government piece clearly is needed if we're going to go beyond the leaders and the champions. But I do think, and I do want to take this opportunity talking about leaders and champions. I just want to acknowledge that we have the Coca-Cola company and PepsiCo sitting on the panel together, and that the great example and a lot of that's to do with incredible individual leadership within both companies. But I can remember a time when this would not have been imaginable. But I think there's a real competitive opportunity for business But I think one of the other interesting things in business, and I think, Gonzalo, you mentioned sort of sector approaches. I think we're seeing some really exciting, what I call pre-competitive coalitions at the sector level, where you have incredibly strong competitors working together. You know, the International Council of Mining and Metals, the national mining associations, the Consumer Goods Forum, where you do have big competitors coming together, because there is the realization that, first of all, these threats are existential to the world and to business, but secondly, that no one company can do it on its own, and that to change some of these ecosystem areas, the obstacles, government obstacles and consumer obstacles, the fiercest of competitors, work respectively together and very proactively together. And I think that's an exciting development.
Muchas gracias, Jane. Ahora, para buscar un poco aprender localmente los ejemplos y de las experiencias y dificultades, ¿no?, que tienen estas personas que practican y son encargadas del área de sostenibilidad a nivel global, y en el caso de Julia, toda la experiencia que tienen en Cerro Verde. Yo les quería preguntar a cada una de ustedes tres, ¿qué tan difícil es integrar el tema de sostenibilidad en sus operaciones? Y más que nada, ¿cuáles son las dificultades? ¿Cuáles son los desafíos más grandes? ¿Cuáles son los problemas que tienen para aplicarlo? Porque es un tema across the board, ¿no? Es un tema transversal, ¿no?, el tema de sostenibilidad. Es un tema que implica recursos, que implica buena voluntad, que implica un liderazgo empresarial, y nos gustaría sus comentarios para poder ver cómo aplicamos eso a nivel local, ¿no? Roberta.
Great question. It's hard.
How hard?
Really hard. I'm done. Yeah. Let me reflect back on the phrase that's come up a number of times already, and that's the business case, and the business case for sustainability in general is reflected. Some of the issues are reflected in the business case for water. If I can say there are two two benefits that we get as PepsiCo from water efficiency. One is financial savings, and two is reputational protection. We also, and I'll say more about those. We also face two challenges. One is the financial savings are not enough, and two, a lack of understanding of our position in a watershed. So if I go back to kind of the benefits, this financial savings thing, and we have a saying in English that's two sides of the same coin. On the one side, there are financial benefits to be had. If you use less water, you save money. On the other hand, water is very cheap in most places in the world. It's very inexpensive, so that when my engineers in a plant do a return on investment equation for a water-saving capital investment, it comes out very poorly. And within PepsiCo, we have hurdle rates, which for the economic majors in the crowd, an internal rate of return or a payback. Our internal rate of return requirements to proceed with a capital investment are about 20% or more. Some differs by business unit. Water-saving capital investment projects often have an internal rate of return in the 10% range, so less than half or half of what we need, so they get killed. They're not worth pursuing from a financial benefit analysis. One of the ways to address that, which we are working on, two ways. We set up a capital fund at the global level that is agnostic, doesn't care really about the internal rate of return. So it's set up specifically to say, we're going to give you the capital to do that project, even though it doesn't make your internal rate of return business unit. The other thing that we are trying to do is those local equations, the internal rate of return equation locally, would change if the true cost of the water was reflected in the equation. Right now, the equation is strictly how much do we pay for the water at the tap. It doesn't include how much we pay in energy costs to move it around the plant, to heat it, to cool it, how much we pay in chemical costs to treat it, and how much we pay the local municipality to discharge it into their sewer system. Those are all costs that are not visible at all to the plant manager, and they're not included in those capital rate of return equations. So that is a tangible thing that we can do to change. The other element is, I mentioned reputational protection. It helps us as PepsiCo particularly in water-stressed environments, particularly during times of drought, to have a good track record of improving operational water use efficiency, that when there is a crisis like a drought and the local regulatory government comes to us and says, you guys are using way too much water, you're killing us, we're gonna cut your allocation, and we can say, look, we've been improving our operational efficiency very steadily over a long-term period, we're committed to it. That, I've been told by my people in the field, is a very compelling soundbite that we use to help avoid restrictions during a time of drought. We can prove that we are among the most efficient users of water in that watershed. Getting back to the business case, how do you put a number on that value? You can't. It's extremely difficult to put a financial benefit number on that value. So again, we have intangibles that are very important from a value standpoint to PepsiCo that we are not incorporating into those equations. So that's kind of the two edges of that coin from a water-related business case. You can save money, but you're not saving enough because you're not capturing true cost of water and the incoming cost of water is too cheap. You can protect your business from a reputational and regulatory standpoint, but you can't put a number on that and integrate it into the equation. I'll stop there.
Muchas gracias, Roberta. ¿Tus comentarios, Ulrike?
Yeah, thank you. I absolutely can subscribe to that. We have essentially the same challenges and opportunity in this space. And so I'm not going to repeat that. I'm just really going to build on what Roberta just said, and maybe sort of taking the challenge for companies generally on sustainability that you asked, César, to a bit of taking a step back and to recognize that actually collectively, globally, companies, in particular companies that have been around for a long time, that have had, like in our case, 140 years, I don't know how old PepsiCo is.
Older. No.
Older.
Probably,
sure.
He probably started about 2 days after you did.
Okay, fantastic. But been around for a long time and have actually been the beacons, the pioneers. That's why we were successful of the Industrial Revolution. And as our whole economic and global system is changing, we talk about globalization 2.0 or Industrial Revolution 4.0. We need to change. We're in a veritable system change that we want to and need to fit into. So if you are our CEOs, they are totally committed to sustainability, but sustainability and system transformation and company transformation comes at a massive speed and with a massive amount of diversity and complexity. So we need to recognize that we need to find our way within that onslaught of issues in making the case around sustainability. And I have the suspicion that the definition of sustainability will change very, very fast and very soon, because it had come from CSR, it has come into sustainability, which is much more embedded with the business. It will be the way we do business. And we see that on climate, and we see it very much in our business as on packaging. The way how that whole topic has changed the business model, is changing business models, will be it's a typical example of how we completely change the way we think about this. And on water, it's quite interesting. It will probably have to be the same. I would say two more things about the building on that, or aspects to that. building on where are the opportunities and where you can make the angle here in this. I would also say supply security, of course, the security of having a business. I think you made the point about you wouldn't have been able to expand, and I've forgotten your name, Julia, your business if you hadn't actually looked systemically at your water resource and wastewater situation, and that is absolutely the case. There are some of our bottling partners are going into a direction, and that is beyond replenish. So in Peru, we have 134% replenish rate, so generating water benefits in the watershed more than we actually use. So that is the first step, and we all do work in this space. In Nigeria, one of our bottlers has gone as far as say, we need a new supply, because otherwise our bottling plant will not be able to grow. But actually the community around us also needs new supply because they're running out of water. So instead of just sorting out the supply for the plant, they conceptualized it much bigger and basically handed over the infrastructure to the municipality to actually operate for the community. So it's this sort of win-win shared value type. And that's the sort of models that I think will grow further. In order for us to have the water, we need to think about the systems around us. And for consumer companies as well, we see increasingly, and that will be something that will be turning from consumer angle to more of a broader societal angle, and it came through a number of times, is the relevance of these actions and the relevance of actions of companies generally to the broader public good. Is what do you do for society? What is your contribution to society? And when we look at our consumer research, in particular, what are the sort of societal issues that consumers really care about, that are sort of prevalent on a global level to people? Of course you have packaging, of course plastics is very high, climate is very high, but consistently water pollution and water availability come in third, fourth, fifth place and consistently over time. So it's always there, and it's certainly the angle where consumers want to know what we do, and society at large will want to know what we do. Another point is, I think, as a challenge perhaps, is education. I just want to give you a little anecdote here, because it shows how, as opposed to other sustainability issues, perhaps water is very different. Because water is the original public good, right? And interestingly, a lot of our investors, for as much as I really appreciate them pushing for more transparency, disclosure, are really interested in what we as food and beverage companies are doing, they haven't quite understood what that means yet. So we have questions from investors that say, so you have a risk here on water, so how are you hedging against this? What is your hedging strategy? And I sat in front of this question, and I really thought, you really have to go to the 101 to say there is no hedging, or the hedging is very different from what it would be for sugar prices or fruit prices or packaging prices or for any of your other private commodities. That is a very important piece, I think, of awareness raising, not only with the broader public, but really very specifically is that what does it mean that it is a public good? What does it mean, hence, that the government, that the public bodies have to have the ultimate, Jane, as you said, the ultimate responsibility? The second big challenge is that, and Roberta, you said that, we all said that in a way, we know what we can do, and there's a lot of best practice of what's already happening inside our operations, outside the operations, you really laid it out. But we know that ultimately, in order for us to have a water secure business, it's not enough just to do these things and do more of them, because you are dependent on that broader network and this watershed, and the watershed is well beyond your means to engage. So the solution is not in investing, not only certainly in investing in more efficiency or into your operations. It is this influencing the system, and that for many companies is a big piece. And so it's important to have leaders like yourselves to actually drive that and lead and convene and move that forward. But the beautiful thing is, and I think you made that jokingly, but it's true, that leads also to the fact that we actually bundle more our goals together, and that we understand water resources as a pre-competitive area. Because we all know, because it's much bigger than us, it cannot be a competitive issue. And the more you actually talk to each other, you understand you have the same goals and you have the same issues, and only by putting together your efforts as companies, as private sector, but particularly then with the public sector, civil society, communities, and academia, you can actually make the progress.
Muchas gracias, Ulrike. Justamente, ¿no? Esa es gran parte de la decisión de sus líderes, de sus presidentes de participar y de ayudar a que 2030 Water Resources Group exista, ¿no? y siga expandiéndose. ¿Tus comentarios, Julia?
Gracias, César. Mencionar que hace un momento en la participación anterior comentaba cuán difícil fue convencer a nuestros accionistas de tomar la decisión de financiar también la planta de tratamiento de aguas residuales a fin de que SEDAPAR, la encargada de saneamiento y del agua potable en Arequipa, pueda tener el servicio completo para la ciudad, financiado básicamente por Cerro Verde, el tratamiento de los desagües. En ese momento lo evaluamos mucho porque no es la filosofía propia nuestra, sin embargo era la decisión correcta. Y desde entonces, y antes inclusive, por la coyuntura mundial y política, no porque fuera invención nuestra, veíamos que en el Perú todos los conflictos que habían con empresas mineras empezaban con el agro sí, mina no, agua sí, oro no, etcétera. Entonces, al final, lo que necesitamos todos hacer no solamente es priorizar nuestras operaciones, sino hacerlo correcto. Y una forma de hacer lo correcto es identificar los objetivos comunes que tenemos como negocio con aquellos de las comunidades o de las ciudades que nos están albergando para poder aportar un granito de arena. Y hay diferentes mecanismos. Nosotros lo hemos financiado directamente, pero también acá en el Perú tienes obras por impuestos, por ejemplo, que lo utilizan varias empresas con mucho éxito. En Arequipa no es posible porque ya el puente Chilina se llevó la mayoría de los recursos, y están prendados a futuro. Sin embargo, existe la forma de hacerlo, existe la forma de que nuestros directores, como lo hacen en Cerro Verde, tenemos en nuestra misión, uno de los objetivos principales es la aceptación social. Mantener esa aceptación social que hemos logrado con mucho esfuerzo, y una manera de hacerlo es con la participación activa en todos los campos. Decía Gonzalo hace rato, necesitamos una hoja de ruta. Y no solamente en el tema hídrico, que es lo que hace ahora el comité multisectorial, como lo sigo llamando yo, sino también una hoja de ruta para organizar nuestras poblaciones y el crecimiento de las ciudades, porque obviamente cuanto más recurso hay, cuanta más agua potable hay, más gente llega a la ciudad y se siguen instalando, se siguen invadiendo, se están invadiendo las faldas del Misti, del Chachani, del Pichu Pichu, y nadie hace nada. Entonces, hasta por un tema de seguridad de las personas, necesitamos que nuestras autoridades se comprometan y que nuestras autoridades, junto con los actores principales de las ciudades, veamos cómo es que se puede solucionar esto a futuro, porque todos necesitamos polos de desarrollo, en los Andes sobre todo, para que la gente que vive en otras ciudades pueda tener oportunidades de desarrollo y haya una inclusión verdadera en el crecimiento que se necesita. Entonces, ese es un reto que necesitamos todos afrontar, y no solo en el tema de recurso hídrico. Sin embargo, tenemos varias oportunidades, construir esa hoja de ruta juntos, obviamente, demostrar que no solamente la cerveza, la Coca-Cola y la Pepsi necesitan agua, también obviamente el cobre y la industria minera, pero mucha gente no se da cuenta que el cobre está en el celular, en el micrófono, en el auto y otros, y por eso es que creo que hay la oportunidad brillante no de competir por el recurso, y en Arequipa lo demostramos, con los agricultores trabajamos mucho, educando en que el manejo eficiente no solo es para nosotros, sino también para los agricultores. Estamos viendo oportunidades, cambios de cultivos. Obviamente en Arequipa no se va a sembrar algodón, pero estamos tratando de trabajar con todos nuestra área de impacto directo, y ya están exportando diferentes productos que no requieren tanta agua y que además están regados con agua limpia ahora, por eso es que los pueden exportar. Entonces, hay muy buenas oportunidades hacia el futuro, que eso es lo que nos anima a nosotros a seguir trabajando, pero el hecho de tener una plataforma multisectorial como el que nos da Water Resources y como el que tenemos a menor escala en Arequipa también, es bueno. ¿Por qué? Porque vamos a escucharnos los unos a los otros, aprender, identificar oportunidades y retos y solucionarlos, pero también, sobre todo, copiar las prácticas que ya están, porque no tenemos que volver a inventar la rueda. Lo que funciona, por lo general, puede replicarse con ajustes dependiendo de qué localidad estamos hablando. Entonces, yo creo que tenemos un compromiso para todos, y quisiera resaltar que nosotros hemos trabajado siempre con gente del Estado. EGASA, SEDAPAR, por ejemplo, son instituciones estatales. Sin embargo, gracias a las decisiones de las personas, en el momento oportuno, la transparencia que se ha manejado siempre, todos los acuerdos a los que hemos arribado, ha logrado el éxito de esta gestión. Obviamente los funcionarios del ANA, del ALA, de la AAA que trabajan en Arequipa han estado involucrados, y esa es la clave. y creo que esa es la invitación que hago a todos, que como personas y como peruanos nos comprometamos a trabajar juntos por el agua en el Perú y en el mundo, de paso, porque tiene un impacto general.
Muchas gracias por tus comentarios, Julia. Darío, te voy a hacer una pregunta distinta, ¿no? ¿Qué obstáculos tú ves para el tema de la inversión privada, ¿no?, en tratamiento de agua? Y a lo mejor una breve idea sobre sostenibilidad en el tema, ¿no?, según los comentarios escuchados por nuestros excelentes panelistas.
Gracias por hacerme esa pregunta, porque justamente ejemplifica el problema que tengo ahorita. Cuando yo vine a Perú hace 11 años, creo que tuve una visión con el tema del agua y comencé a promocionar desalinización y desarrollé a nivel personal un proyecto en Paracas para dotar de agua a Aceros Arequipa, un total de 3.000 metros cúbicos día. Ese proyecto lo desarrollé y luego lo vendí a Fluence. Es por eso que ahora trabajo con Fluence para terminar de desarrollar este proyecto. Pero a lo largo de todo este tiempo, que ya son casi 7 años desde que arranqué esto, lo único que me he conseguido son barreras por todas partes. Permisos, temas burocráticos, tiempos, CERNAMP, produce. Son tantas las barreras que colocan al sector privado que quiere hacer agua, que voy a liberar 3.000 metros cúbicos de agua al día de la zona de Paracas que no tiene agua. Y sin embargo, todavía no me terminan de dar un permiso para lanzar mi tubería de la planta a Aceros Arequipa. Es increíble. Se habla mucho del agua, no hay agua, traemos la solución del agua y simplemente no nos dan la oportunidad de terminar nuestro proyecto. Entonces, a mucho hablamos de hay que acercarse a los gobiernos y hay que acercarse a las autoridades, y sí, tenemos que explicarle un poco más de qué se trata la desalinización, por ejemplo, en nuestro caso, y de qué se trata el manejo del agua, porque de ahí parte el problema. La falta de comunicación y de entendimiento sobre los diferentes sistemas de tratamiento y producción de agua. Estoy muy envuelto en el tema municipal en Paracas, y me preguntaste sobre alguna idea de sostenibilidad, y se me ocurrió algo, me parece súper interesante, que se lo planteé a la alcaldesa de Paracas el viernes pasado, junto con todos los gerentes de la municipalidad, y es un ejemplo de lo que podemos hacer para sostenibilidad y hacer agua. La Municipalidad de Paracas cuenta con 200 hectáreas de tierra en donde no han sembrado absolutamente nada, están baldías, vacías. Entonces, mi planteamiento es muy sencillo. Déjeme colocar una planta desaladora como Fluence, déjeme colocar una planta de tratamiento de aguas residuales. Yo le suministro 1.500 metros cúbicos de agua al día al pueblo de Paracas. Yo trato 1.200 metros cúbicos al día de agua residuales. Con eso yo voy a regar 50 hectáreas de arándanos. Es una idea fantástica. Y el arándano lo voy a sembrar en 50 hectáreas que usted me va a otorgar como municipalidad por 20 años. Saque los números. En 7 años recuperamos la inversión a un 7% de interés. Una idea genial. Implementémoslos. No tienen idea de cómo. Entonces, podríamos tener esto como un ejemplo o una fórmula para generar agua, tratar el agua residual y a la vez tener sembríos que nos pueden producir una economía positiva. Generas empleo. O sea, hay muchas cosas que esto podría llevarnos que son positivas, pero ¿cómo lo implementamos? Y si hay alguien acá que tenga la respuesta, por favor, hable conmigo, porque esto podríamos nosotros replicarlo a nivel mundial. Gracias.
Muchas gracias, Darío. Tenemos una persona que tiene que partir, que está en el panel en unos minutos, por lo tanto vamos a no tener preguntas el día de hoy, y quisiera más bien que podamos agradecer la participación y la experiencia de Ulrike, de Roberta, de Darío, de Julia, de Jane Nelson, ¿no?, por habernos dado no solo ideas, ¿no?, sino ejemplos reales de cómo poder practicar e implementar en el país, ¿no? El día de ayer, Jane, en el evento de minería, de minería y de agua, la ministra de Agricultura, al clausurar, al terminar, dio los siguientes comentarios, ¿no? Me gusta el certificado azul, no por el tema de que las empresas reduzcan sus operaciones, tengan ISOs. Me gusta el certificado azul, el Blue Certificate, por el valor compartido, ¿no? Y ese creo que es el mensaje que podemos rescatar en todas las compañías que hacen este gran esfuerzo de ser parte de esta cadena para lograr sostenibilidad del agua y recursos hídricos. O sea, quería pedirles un aplauso a todos, ha sido un excelente panel también. Sí, que se queden acá un ratito, porque voy a invitar más bien a Karen Snack, que es la Global Manager de 2030 Water Resources Group. Le gustaría invitarla al podio para que pueda dar unas palabras finales en este foro académico. Bienvenida, Karen.
Great. Well, thank you. I'll be brief because I think so much has already been said today, and I actually have been to many conferences and obviously go to many conferences, but it was really, really inspiring today. I mean, I think each panelist shared so much perspective, and then also collectively, that I'm really, really inspired moving forward. And one of the key, I think, in summarizing is it is obviously quite easy to be quite negative, right? You know, the ideas of day zero cities. I mean, it's hard to wake up sometimes in the morning thinking, okay, if we're gonna have 25 day zero cities in the next year, you know, what is that for the future of humanity? But I think from today, what we can see is that there is a commitment and there are many positive solutions, right? And you may disagree with how I group them, but I actually group them into three key areas, listening to all of the different panelists. So the first area is around technology and infrastructure solutions. And when I say infrastructure, I would say green and gray infrastructure. These kind of solution mix can be drip irrigation, it could be around wastewater treatment and reuse, you know, the whole opportunities around circular economy, and the linkages across in terms of treated wastewater being used in the agricultural sector as well. So I think, to me, that's like one big bucket from what I've heard from the different panelists today. The second big area is around communications, awareness, and education. I would group it together. Even though there are different elements to it. So part of it is around data transparency and sharing of data to help inform decision making. The other is around communications, but not if you think of like a newspaper article. To me, it's more about communications between, let's say, government ministries that don't speak to each other. How do you enable that kind of communication? So it is the social media, it is press, but at the heart of it is really communications of people to people that we need to make tomorrow better than today and yesterday. And in the second bucket, I would also say behavior change has come up quite a bit in the discussion today. And I would say behavior change going from company CEOs to the average person on the street, right? I mean, obviously companies are working to get their CEOs to make water a top priority, but also we talked a lot about behavior change of the average person just understanding the significance of water and how we need to put value on water. So that's where I would kind of the second big area. And then the third big area would be around, I would say it's a lot, but it's policy, incentives, regulations, and the broader issue of governance, right? We always say, and even Gonzalo always, you know, water is a, you know, governance issue, and we just, unfortunately, we have poor water governance, right? No matter where we are. So I think, you know, this issue of tackling the political economy of water and recognizing that is really, really critical. And I think we're making progress on that. And so I don't want to feel discouraged. I feel like let's feel encouraged that we're at least putting that out there, and we need to see how we move forward. So it's not to say this is all easy, but if you look at kind of the brilliant people we've had on the panelists and the moderators today, you know, each one, maybe you don't all agree on some issues, and we got into a little bit of some different perspectives here today, but you're committed to come together that we need to transform water management. And, you know, the role of multi-stakeholder platforms is obviously critical in that. In the end, I guess the way I would summarize it is that water is a multi-stakeholder issue. That's just how it is. And the sooner we recognize that, I think the sooner we can say, okay, you know, we can have the different actors come together and say, how can we tackle these different issues and come towards solutions? So this is how I would summarize the panelists' interventions into those key areas. I think we've had a lot of ideas. Let's move forward here. I do want to thank the opportunity to bring this issue and discussions here today for those here today and those online. I do also want to thank Elsa and the Universidad del Pacífico for just the leadership in terms of bringing this to students and to teachers, but also to the broader community in Lima and in the broader Peru. So really look forward to how this can continue going forward. And then, of course, thank you for all the participants today and everyone it took to organize this conference. It's often not recognized, all the hard work to pull these things together. But it really, I think the topics, the panelists, really, I think was really inspiring and all complementing each other, but as I said, didn't always agree. So I do really want to thank, on behalf of 2030 Water Resources Group and just me individually, all the hard work that went in today. And I really do feel like we have, you know, I'm going to go back home and I feel more positive, especially from today, to be honest, of just the ability to bring great minds together and say, okay, we're going to tackle these challenges and we're really going to make a big push toward 2030 collectively. Thank you.
Muchas gracias. Bueno, gracias a todos y buenas tardes, muy amables. Gracias.